person. She's joining you. There we go.
She's gonna pull up a chair. We're gonna rock and roll, and
Love it.
we're gonna just go through this, and
All
I
right.
think that'll work out well.
So real quick, there is a screen sharing button if you'll have a presentation you're going to share down. It's right. I don't know why they put it, but it's right next to, for me at least, in room, or it's probably leave room for you. But there's a toggle screen sharing. It just looks like a rectangle with a line underneath it.
Got it. Yep.
So you tap that, and it'll ask you which window you want to share. And what I'll do, Dre is my assistant here. She's here with me. We'll help monitor the chat. And any questions before we get started?
Let me see here.
I mean, from Adam or Dana. Dana, I like how you abandoned post and you said we're coming to join.
All right. Can you guys see my screen?
We can. We see your full browser window. So you've got the tabs across the top. Right now it says building. It's on the building together tab.
Great. I'm going to start the slideshow, and hopefully that's center set. Is that what everybody's seeing?
It is.
Awesome.
All right. So real quick introduction. I connected with Adam and Dana probably about a year and a half ago through their corporation called Healing Hearts. And I was listening to the community of things that we were going through and understanding, and being, married. Most of us are married. Most of us have kids right at the time. One of the things that we struggled with was how spouses interact with money together. So I went on a mission to find somebody. I knew we had this in-person event coming up in Gatlinburg, and I wanted to have somebody in person. So I started looking around Knoxville, which is the closest major metro area. Found Dana, you had done a bunch of stuff on YouTube and some of the social media stuff. So that's how I got connected with you, got to your site, and you guys came and presented this. And I one of the most memorable moments of that conference was guys texting, and gals, right? But some of the guys specifically spoke up and said, during this presentation, I'm texting my wife. I wasn't just looking at my phone, but I'm texting my wife, making sure she feels like she knows that she's appreciative, because something you guys said triggered them that they need to show some more appreciation toward their spouses. So want to thank you for that. And with that introduction, I want to turn it over to you with a very light-hearted introduction, but I want to turn it over to you and let you guys introduce yourselves, and then let's talk about the topic today with spousal alignment.
Awesome. We're going to dive in. I want to play a little bit around with tech to make sure. Will you all, if I exit screen, is it showing you my whole window, or are you staying on the slideshow when I do that?
We see your entire window.
Okay. I didn't get it. Okay. Well, we're just going to try our best to stay in frame, so you guys have the PowerPoint centered. We'll do our best to stay in frame. But yeah, we'll introduce each other. So my name's Adam York. I got my PhD from the University of Tennessee. Go Vols. I have to say that. I paid a lot of money to them. My whole life's work, all my research interests center around helping couples connect, helping couples communicate with each other around a myriad of different issues. And just to touch base, it was a reach out of nowhere that Jay had to us last year. We didn't know him from anyone. He barely knew us, but I am just, Jay, so appreciative of the community you're trying to cultivate here, the values that you have front and center around what you guys are trying to do. I just love your heart for that, Jay. And that was just clear to us in last year's community that you care about these people's lives and where they're headed. And this is just one hopefully meaningful conversation that helps them, again, build a financial future together and build that sort of relational future together. So thanks for having me here.
I just want to echo that. Thanks, Jay, for having us. My name is Dana Vince. I've been practicing as a marriage counselor since 2006. And the reason why I'm so easily able to jump here in Adam's office is he's my business partner, and we share a group practice. We oversee 16 or 17 other therapists, all doing couples counseling. So we're both just really passionate about helping couples. And so it's just exciting to be here and get to use some of our knowledge and experience to share with you all about how to handle money differently in your relationship. So I think with that said, we'll jump in.
Yeah. Zoom presenting is always a bit of a different animal. And so we can't be in the room with you all, reading your energy, seeing your reactions. And so I'm just going to take a long, awkward pause in between each slide to let you all give feedback, questions, things like that. Again, we'll have a little bit of time at the end as well, but I want to catch those questions and comments as they're happening. And if you have a question, it's likely that other people in the room have that same question, and they may not just be eager enough to ask. So I hope you'll do that. So let's dive into talking a little bit about. Here's our agenda for today. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about attachment theory because it's critical to understanding the why we fight about money, why we struggle to talk about it. Dana's going to talk a little bit about the interactional cycles we get into that are so common in our office as couples therapists. We're talking about the role of finances and a variety and how those intersect with couples conflicts. Then we're going to talk about the most common patterns we see couples get into around finances. And then we're going to leave you with just a few tidbits, principles to manage those common patterns that we see. That's all we're going to tackle today, but we hope it helps illuminate. One of the things we hope it doesn't do is, you're going to see yourself and your partner in some of these. We hope you don't feel shame because of that. And we hope you don't, blame your partner or analyze them too much. Just realize, oh, we're human. We have patterns around money. Let's look at this in a gracious and kind way as we do that. Okay. Any questions about any of that?
None at the moment. This is good stuff, Adam, and I like how you framed it in saying, you guys prefer to do this in a room so you can kind of read the energy of the room. Dre and I are going to do our best to poke the chat and make sure people are talking or chatting. And I'm assuming one of the things that I know was new to me last year was the whole idea of around attachment theory. Like, what is this? Like, what? And I believe you're going to get into that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. That's the next slide here. Let's talk about that. I could geek out on attachment theory for days talking with you. I have written hundreds of pages poured of ink talking about attachment theory. I presented on attachment theory at the National Association of Youth at Risk. There's endless that can be said about it. I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version to help us today in about 5 minutes. Hopefully I'll keep to that. So attachment theory. The big names to know are Bowlby and Ainsworth. If you want to do some history reading, some Googling yourself. But Bowlby's pioneering work, what it did for the field of psychology was seminal. We used to think that relationships were a secondary need. That is, we sought human relationships because they gave us food, water, and shelter. And what Bowlby discovered in his research was actually the need for connection is primary and it is essential to human functioning, that people can't survive without it. That is the reason, actually, that you can visit people in a hospital. Before Bowlby, there was the germ theory, which is still true of infection. And there was such an important need to protect people from infection, especially infants, that they would often take babies away from their moms, put them in the nursery, and wouldn't allow contact because they're trying to preserve them. But what they found is infants struggled with that in nurseries. They also found that people who were sick struggled when they didn't have connection with a loved one. What they found in both infants and people who were sick is that the connection with a loved one helped them heal, develop, and grow. It was vital. And so because of that, you can thank Bowlby for the reason you get to hold your baby in the hospital and you get to visit sick family members. He was that critical in developing that. So Ainsworth set up a strange situation. And this is going to illustrate many of the principles we talk about. So I want to have this picture in your mind. The strange situation, which is an experiment. You can see videos of this online if you want to Google it. But basically what they did was they put an infant in a room with their parent. They played, and then they'd have the parent leave, and then they'd have the parent return. And they just, watch what happened. And they'd try to assess what was happening there. And what they found is infants and all of us as human beings need an attachment figure as both a safe haven and a secure base. And I'll break down what those words mean. But the way that looked was the infant that's really securely attached to their parent would play about the room happily. They would build, they would explore, they would sometimes look back at their parent to show them something, or if there was a loud noise, they might go back to their parent for comfort for a second. They'd be comforted, and then they'd go back about playing the room. That is, having that comforting figure allowed them to explore, take risks, build. Okay, this is a really critical piece. And when their parent would leave, they would be sad about it. And when their parent returned, they were happy to see them. That's what health looks like. They found that there's really two primary ways we respond that are unhealthy in that situation. One is a subset of infants would not play about the room happily. They would anxiously cling to their parents. They would get angry at them for leaving. And when they returned, they were angry at them and struggled to be soothed, struggled to play happily, struggled to explore the room, right? They were insecurely attached, we might say anxiously attached. There was the other infant who would play about the room, but they didn't seem happy. They didn't build much. They seemed disinterested. One might say sad or depressed. They seemed almost indifferent to their parent leaving, and they didn't respond really well to them returning. They didn't turn much to them. What they found in later tests was this child, when they strapped them up to little machines, was actually pretty distressed. And what we call that is avoidant attachment, right? Within us, as we grow in adults, you'll see we probably have one of those two tendencies in us when we are stressed, to become relationally avoidant or to become anxiously preoccupied with our relationship. But the attachment theory has told us that our need for connection is primary. And when we feel securely connected, we are more likely to take risks, to explore the world, and to build, right? I think this has a critical intersection with what you all are wanting to do and build a financial future and build a relationship with your partner. Dana is going to talk a little bit about what happens when we aren't securely attached. For all of us, we can get into a cycle, and she's going to talk about what that cycle looks like.
So you're looking at this image, and one of the things I want to say about what Adam just shared is attachment doesn't end in childhood. Our need for a significant, important other to show up at vulnerable times is primary for us. So our partner, in childhood, a parent, maybe your attachment figure. In adulthood, it's your significant other. And so much how infants respond as adults, if we can't connect with our significant other, we can have one of those two reactions, is to either get anxious and potentially critical and pursuing, or to shut down, avoid, and pull away. So it becomes a feedback loop. So this figure 8 that you see, it doesn't have a start or an end. It's just where couples can get caught when they're in distress. So as we're looking at this, I want you to think of it like, when you're in a negative pattern with your partner, any of us, we see the ball coming at us, and we might react. But we want to be able to look at the game. So that's what we're trying to do here, is just get an objective view of what happens when couples get into distress with each other. So it's sort of like, the more I feel this, I do this, that impacts you, and then you kind of come back, and the more you. So I'll give you an example, and I'm going to give you a financial example so it fits what we're trying to talk about here. I'm going to give you the example of a couple where the man in the couple grew up very poor, so poor that they had to reuse garbage liners when they emptied the garbage. And even though at this point in his adulthood he has $1 million in the bank, he is very restrictive and rigid with spending. And so he gets really protective. So we could look at, if on the right-hand side you see one partner, his behavior, he could look controlling, again, very rigid and protective. And his secondary emotion may be like defensiveness, but underneath is a primary need to provide for his family and fear that if that money gets spent too quickly, he wouldn't be able to protect or provide, and that can get really scary for him. So his attachment need from his partners to be understood and accepted for the way that he is, and for her to join him in wanting to protect their financial future. But what happens for her is when he gets controlling and rigid, she feels like a child. She feels untrusted. She feels like you don't believe in me, and that she doesn't feel included. Like he keeps the money over there and she doesn't get to be a part of it. And so this results in arguments where, she's like, we have $1 million in the bank. I want to go buy a new couch for our living room. And he gets really controlling about how much she can spend. Do we really need that couch? And then she doesn't feel like he really cares about her wants, and that the money is his and not theirs. And that can cause sort of a feedback loop between them. The more she tries to spend the money and wanting to feel worthy, the more scared he gets that the money won't be there. The more controlling he gets, the more controlling she gets, the worse it feels for her, and they get caught in a pattern. What I want to point out in this is it isn't really about money at that point. It's about their relationship. How do you see me? What do you think of me? And are we really in this together? Do you have my back? Do you see things the way I see things? And when that disconnection happens, that's when reactive patterns occur, and we can get caught there. So where we're going to go from here, I want to pause and ask if there's any questions, but we're going to look more specifically about the role that finances can play when couples get stuck in these patterns. But any questions coming up from what you're looking at here?
I'm going to call in a few people: Joanne, Mandy, Julia, Marshall, Gwaith, Jamie. I'm going to call on everybody. Questions?
It makes a lot of sense. I don't really have a question, I guess, at this point. Just
I have a question
on it. I'm a very introspective person, so I'm going to continue to judge myself this whole time.
Yeah. that was going to be my question: is does anybody feel like Adam and Dana just took a microscope and is talking into your life and is talking about you? Because
Oh yeah,
I remember this from last year, and I'm like, I don't feel like I talked that much about my and my wife's relationship, but I feel like you guys centered this presentation around us. So Joanne, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. Marcia says it makes sense. He can see his relationship with his spouse. Julia says this all makes good sense processing how this may apply in my marriage. So this is thank you all for that feedback. So yeah, this is good. Adam, Dana, thank you.
And it's you can all resonate because it's pretty universal, right? We all need to know that an important other is going to be there when we need them. And when that feels insecure, we have all kinds of reactions to that. So I'm going to make this more specifically about finances. So what are sort of the attachment questions that come up around money? Key questions in money conversations that we may be asking our significant other is, are you a partner to me? When we're talking about future goals, money, investments, trips, like how we spend our money, are you with me? Can I count on you? If we have a plan, if we put a plan in place, can I count on you to show up with me in executing that plan? Do we have mutual trust? Do I trust you with our finances, to pay the bills if that's your role, to not overspend if we have a budget? Do I have an equal voice? Right? This is really important. It's like, you might have a situation where one person is a stay-at-home parent, the other one earns the income, but do we have an equal voice in deciding how money is spent, how money is invested, that we are a partnership? And even though I might not be the one who's the primary breadwinner, do I still have a voice in how we go about this? And do you care about what's important to me? Right? We might have different goals. I might be someone who really values experiences with our family, and I want us to put our money toward taking trips and going on adventures, where my partner might be somebody who's like, I want to invest so we have a strong retirement. Are we able to listen to what is important to one another and plan accordingly, especially when those things are different?
Tough questions.
Oh, something's coming up.
Is
Yeah,
that a question?
no, those are just some really tough questions. Like, I really feel like if I sat down with my wife, those are questions she may ask me. Like
Yeah.
they're
And
good.
in a secure relationship, all these would be a resounding yes, right? And if
Right.
any of these are, I'm not sure, that's an area that you would want to work on with your partners. Where are we not meeting each other?
Yeah,
There.
absolutely.
Yeah. And we all probably have one of these questions that isn't a resounding yes with our partners.
Right.
And that's
That make
okay.
you that make you pause and like, do I want to admit that in front of this group or not? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
there's
So at the end of this, are you guys gonna give us like your schedule and like access to your calendar?
Oh goodness! Only in the state of Tennessee. So yes, we can chat about that. But or we can definitely get you connected with other trusted, clinicians in your area who kind of work from the same mode we do. But yeah, if this resonates with you. Um, yeah, I want to jump to the next slide, and then I'm going to jump back to another slide. But we're just going to give a bird's eye view of the most common patterns we see in our office. We're going to give you a picture of what it looks like on the surface, and then we're going to talk to you about what tends to be going on in the subconscious, if you will, what tends to be bubbling under the surface, okay? So I'm just going to jump back a couple slides. When we talk about all these patterns, we're talking about this slide. We're going to be talking about how it's a cycle that takes on a life of its own. It's mutually reinforcing, and it's escalating because it's mutually reinforcing. It's not about either partner being a bad guy. It's not about one option being better than the other. It's actually about this cycle and this pattern that we want to slow down and maybe sometimes even exit out of. So, with that being said, the first and probably most common pattern we see around money is a spender saver pattern. Okay. And I like to use this image as a high wire, and I'll talk to you about that in a second. But the biggest thing is for the saver, usually the greatest thing that money can purchase for them psychologically is security or safety. Okay. That helps them relax in the world. And I would rather spend my money buying myself a cushion, security, safety. That's what gives them pleasure. Okay. And for the spender, the greatest thing money can purchase is experiences and really freedom. Spending is about being able to savor life. It is being able to fully engage in life and enjoy all that it has to offer in the moment. Often a more present orientation, though not always, right? And so, again, you can see how these sort of naturally go against each other. But I want to talk about what your partner, who might be in a different position, might be experiencing. And that's why this high wire is here. For the saver, life can feel like a high wire act. And when they have a net beneath them, that they can do it. They can learn to walk a high wire, maybe even enjoy it. Maybe even do it with abandon, right? With their head held up. But what the spender sort of does to them, the saver, they sort of ask, "Hey, can I take a little bit of this net to buy a car? Can I take a little bit of this net to buy this trip I want to go on?" That's sometimes what it can feel like to the saver, right? On the reverse side, what the spender can feel like is money is this really great toy they've just been given, right? And it's like Christmas Day every time they get a paycheck. And it's like, I get to play today. And what the saver says to them is, "Hey, I know you just got that toy, but we're going to go outside and bury it. And you're going to get to play with it in a month. Is that okay if we just bury that toy and play with it in a month? And actually, we'll have another toy. We'll have two toys for you when that month goes away." The spender is just like, wah, 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 right? That can be discouraging, right? And so we'll talk a little bit about what's needed here. But one simple tidbit is, that saver needs that attachment security to know their real and legitimate fears around needing that cushion are understood and validated by the spender. That spender needs to not be overly criticized by the saver. They need to feel understood in their longing to connect. Just a quick, reflection from my own marriage is, there's a benefit when you can feel connected around this. Because for me, in my own marriage, my wife and I get on different sides of this. I'm more the saver, she's more the spender. One of the things I've gotten to enjoy since I've been married is we go on vacations. I never did that, right? So she's a spender. I've started to like vacations. This is a fun thing to spend money on in life, right? The good thing for her is that I have a little bit of a saver nudge, and we have a roof over our heads. She likes that. She enjoys that privilege in life because we pay our mortgage and we have savings and things like that. So when we're really well understanding each other, we get the mortgage, paid off, and we get the vacations, right? That's a win-win. But when we're disconnected, we fight over that, right? Any questions about that pattern?
I don't see any.
Okay.
Okay. I'll move on to the next one. Hopefully, as you're listening to this, and I know this is a lot to take in. We're kind of condensing this into a short space, but hopefully one of the things you're gathering is to be connected to your partner, you have to be connected to yourself. Understanding what money means to you, what your values, expectations, fears are around it can help kind of understand some reactions you might have to it. So parent-child dynamic, and some of these overlap and are going to sound similar, but there are a little bit of variations in them. But similar to the spender-saver, you have one partner that tends to create rules around money. They're very boundaried, and they become sort of the dictator. And it may be very fear-driven, right? If I don't have this is how I make sure that the bills get paid, is I have these rigid rules and make sure that these are followed. And then the other partner can end up feeling like, oh, I have somebody to answer to. Like, I'm not my own adult, independent and able to make my own decisions. I have to be accountable to this parent. And they feel like they don't have a voice or a say in how money is managed and just have to follow the rules. So these are people that are being reactive. They may not understand that they have values around spending and saving, and they get really reactive. And so the more the child kind of argues against the rules, the more that can scare the person in the parent role and become even more rigid with those rules. And then the more rigid they become, the more angry and upset their partner can become, that I'm supposed to be an adult here and I'm not being treated like one. So that can create a really negative feedback pattern. So one of the things we're going to talk about is how to slow that down and identify what fears might underlie those reactions to be able to have more kind and vulnerable conversations with one another to come together and find that balance like Adam was talking about. Any questions there?
Still not. Hey guys, if y'all have questions, just pop them in the chat or come on and raise your hand. And
yeah, and we're going to leave room at the end as well, so we can just kind of slide through these.
I have and this may be something you get into later. Is I see my relationship with my wife so far, and what you've presented so far. I realize there's areas where I need to work on, right? And I think you labeled it on slowing things down a little bit, maybe that slowing that feedback loop down. My question is there ever an opportunity where the spender saver, let's just call it that because I can understand that a little bit better, the saver doesn't become quite the saver and it becomes more of the spender, or the spender becomes more of the saver? Like, is there ever like a transition to that? Is that what you mean by slowing the feedback loop down kind of thing?
So I think generally nature comes into play here. I mean, I think there can be life events that can happen that can create a shift. But generally when we're saying slowing down, it's more like just connecting and tuning into self.
Okay.
And like, what are my fears around money? What are my, what have I learned about the role money plays in life? And how is that coming out in how I treat my partner around financial decisions? And then also being curious about your partner's answers to those questions. How did they learn to manage money? What value does money hold in their life? And what reactions do they have in terms of how we, and if you can kind of really stay curious with your partner and look at where are we different and how can we allow for one another's influence to be able to find a balance that leaves us both feeling valued and respected. That's what we mean by slowing down, to be able to have that kind of
Gotcha.
conversation. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Jamie, did you have something to add? Just saw you come on video.
Yeah, I was just gonna. I'm assuming there's gonna be. I may be jumping ahead, like some sort of action steps of how
Yeah.
to try and solve these because, yeah, I mean, to Jay's point, these resonate
Yep.
very well with me. Almost so far of like,
Yeah.
Saver turns into parent, and I'm sure I'll be part of the next one too, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, we got some action steps at the end.
Awesome.
We're just trying to make you feel really bad about yourself first.
Hey, that's hard to
This is
do,
part of
but
our-
I do resonate. You know,
This
so.
is a part of our therapy marketing campaign.
Well-
Realize you have a problem, right?
Well,
Yeah.
That's the
here's
first
what I
step.
love. Here's what I love about how Dana just answered my question. I was sitting there saying, I know there's times where I feel like I'm in the wrong and I'm being the parent and I don't need to be the parent and I need to recognize and improve on that. And Dana's like, no, you just need to recognize it and not necessarily and see how you can use that to your advantage. So I'm liking this so far. Like let's keep going.
Yeah, that's the good news is we're not asking you to change yourself. We're actually
Yeah.
asking you to live in a more accepting way with your partner and yourself. You're
Okay.
likely to, we have a saying we say, Dana sort of just said it right there, but just to reiterate, we're mostly success in marriage is slowing down our cycle and really just seeing each other in a new way. We get into these rigid patterns. That's the problem. But yeah, you don't fully exit out of them, but
Yeah.
we can just slow them down a lot. So,
And I think too, and I don't want to speak for everybody on the call, but we have, my wife and I will have one of these interactions that is not so friendly, right? And y'all touched on this a minute ago, is the interval between that interaction and the next time something like that comes up, like it extends, like it's going to push out the next time we're going to talk about something money wise, right? And
Yeah.
then if that interaction is again not a very constructive one, then the next interval is even going to be further along. So I can see where that is a wedge that just drives into the whole relationship dynamic of that.
Snowballs.
yeah, I love what you're highlighting there, Jay, is really every interaction around money is an opportunity to build a more secure connection or erode the security in our connection. And if we keep that in focus rather than the math, rather than the logic, then we'll be much better positioned to have these conversations with our partner. So I'm going to talk about the next pattern, hide and seek. For varying reasons, one partner might be because of their family of origin and background, maybe needing to hoard different things. But one partner hides their money habits. Sometimes that hider is a saver. Sometimes that hider is a spender. So that off the other partner then finds out, well, you got this separate account, or hey, you've got this you've been spending what on all these lunches this week or on Amazon or whatever. They feel in the dark and then they become mistrusting, right? Here's how this gets into a cycle. The mistrusting partner can sometimes then feel this fear of the unknown. So they ask more questions. Those questions can come across as critical or interrogation. The more they come across as critical interrogation, maybe the hiding partner feels like a failure or they feel controlled. They resist feeling like they're a disappointment to their partner or feeling controlled, so they hide more. The more they hide, the more they stir up this fear of the unknown in their partner, right? And maybe what started off, again, as just them having lunch on Fridays, and not telling their partner about it, all of a sudden becomes a whole lot of hiding and a whole lot of interrogation and criticism, right? But again, underlying this is this hide and seek pattern is one partner's fear of not knowing, maybe not feeling cared for by their partner, and the other person's fear sometimes of being, a disappointment to their partner, of not getting it right, and that causes them to hide. and is a very common pattern we see. Any thoughts, questions, reflections on that?
I would just add, because we got a quiet crew here, and I don't want to dominate the conversation. So if you guys have something to add in, but here's something that just slapped me in the face as you're talking about this hide and seek. Is I on my calendar every quarter I track our net worth, right? Our growth. What just dawned on me is my wife is nowhere part of that conversation. I have not thought like it is on every quarter. I have this sheet I go through and update it, and I look at it, and I don't include her, and I don't know why. I'm not trying to hide anything, it's not, there's nothing to be hidden. It's just this epiphany that I just had, like,
Yeah.
so why are you not including her like in this
Yeah.
conversation?
As you investigate these things, I'll say this too, and each one in the group, usually somewhere under there is some type of fear. And so if you can identify what that is, you can create a different conversation with your partner and with yourself, right? It's like, what am I afraid of if I were to share this? There's usually something that's being protected. And so again, approaching it not with shame or criticism, but just looking at because we all have it. We all have fears. And money is one of those really big things that can trigger a lot of fear, right? About the future, about the present, about needs, being on the same page. So really, like, again, the slowing down, right? And looking in, like, what is that about? So that's great just to have that insight. It gives you an opening to start to explore what might be underneath that.
And maybe it is fear. The other where I've kind of lean on this is maybe that parental role or protector, provider, presider kind of role as a husband, and quite frankly, that puts a lot of heavy weight on my shoulders that I don't like a lot of times. And usually that comes out as my anxiety comes out as what I call blow ups, where I yell at the family, kids typically,
and sometimes these things, like, it can be worthy to look back into your childhood. Like, how did my family deal with money? If you were a kid who never got to have nice things, if your wants or things that were exciting to you were not acceptable, then that kind of, I'm keeping this over here. It's the time of my life I actually get to have, and I don't want anybody to take that away from me. Like, sometimes those things can create protections that we might not even be aware of if we don't take the time to just explore. What did money look like in my childhood? How did that happen between my parents?
Oh, I mimic my dad's behavior very much. A lot. And I shared this with the community last week. He still he doesn't have a credit card, doesn't have a checking account, does everything in cash, even including once a month. He drives around town and pays all of his bills still. I'm not that, but as far as he and my mom and their relationship with money together, yeah. Anyway, this is turning into a Jay session, not
That's okay.
No, it's good. It's good. Yeah. I one of the things I'd say about today, and then Dana's going to dive into an exercise. Hopefully we can maybe even just do as a group. But one of the things I'd say is if some insight pops up in you today and you identify with like one of these patterns and you say, I kind of do that. If you want to here's like a risky homework assignment. If you want to level up your relationship, I would tell you to like go to your partner and say, hey, I was in this presentation today. I realized I do this. How does that feel to you when I do that? See where that conversation goes. If you want to level up your relationship, that opens up so much.
And I'm like Julia. I like how you labeled that risky homework to level up your relationship. I like it.
But if you ask the question, this is the really hard part. You have to be open and willing to hear the answer.
Yep.
Because that can be the hardest part.
Yep.
That's awesome.
We generally don't like having the mirror held up to us when it comes to our own difficult behaviers.
I mean, other people, not us.
Right.
We're therapists. We're marriage therapists. We got
it.
We'll make sure we send this to you so you guys have a copy of this. But this is something you can even take home and do with your partner. You don't necessarily have to do this now, but you want to be able to fill in these blanks with each other. The more I fill in the blank, the more you fill in the blank, and then the more and then we're caught in this cycle. So it might look something like, the more I try to restrict spending, the more frustrated you get and spend more, right? And try to like, take more money or have more freedom because I'm trying to control it. And then the more rigid I get, and we get caught in this dynamic. So you kind of just look with your partner, where do we get caught with each other around how we deal with money, and what are some of the emotions that we experience around that? If you're looking at yourself, when my partner spends, I get freaked out. Like, wait a minute. I can even tell you a personal story. I take care of the finances in my household, and we were nearing the end of the month, and money was a little bit tight, and I have everything in these categories, and money in our free spending category was getting low, and we're out to dinner, and my husband and my son both order extra fillets that cost like an extra $8 a piece. At the end of the day, that's not a big deal. But in that moment, I'm like, we're at the end of the month. You don't need extra fillets, right? It's like, why am I having that reaction? And then how is my husband going to feel if I tell him he can't or shouldn't order an extra fillet because he's hungry, right? It's like, well, then he's going to feel, I can't, I'm an adult, I want extra food, right? So it's like, how do we get into this pattern with each other? And what does it really mean to us more than just that moment in the restaurant? So you're just sitting with your partner and kind of exploring where does this stuff show up, and how do we react, and how does that reaction leave the other feeling?
Kind of feel like y'all may have like some surveillance on me because that situation literally happened just like so.
Oh, I'm telling a true story. This was us at Cracker Barrel last weekend. This is a true story.
That's good. I can relate.
I'm going to have Adam just jump in, and this is the question you were asking, like, what can we do to step out of these cycles with one another?
Yeah. One of the things, I think this speaks to one of the things you were saying, Jay, but clarifying expectations, boundaries, and roles. Who pays the bills? Who and how are money decisions made? How does budgeting work? How are bank accounts managed, etc.? If you and your wife have really talked about it extensively, you're the one who pays the bills, manages the account, and things like that. Um, you know, Jay, your situation where you say she doesn't really know, she doesn't really see it all, she may not want to. You may go to her today, you may talk to her and said, hey, I realized today I don't really share that whole overall budget with you. How do you feel about it? And she might say, that's awesome. I love that I don't ever have to look at money, and I trust you about that. That's a win for you, right?
Right.
The important part is, have we talked about that, or have we slid into these unspoken roles? And do we actually have some unspoken, maybe resentments about it, or unspoken fears that we haven't known how to voice? So that's really critical. It's okay to have role specialization in these things. But again, it's just a matter of if we've talked openly about it. And a decision that got made 5 to 10 years ago is not a decision that is made for the rest of your marriage, right? I know my wife and I, we've had to renegotiate roles with kids coming in and as they age, and like, hey, I want to be more involved with money. I want to be less involved. And so that's really near the top of my list of things you can do, really to build that really healthy relationship around money conversations. So,
So the next one is just really valuing each other. It's recognizing that your partner has different perspectives, different experiences, came from a different background, different family of origin. They may have different knowledge, opinions. They obviously have different wants and desires, fears, beliefs. You have different personalities. And recognizing that your partner's perceptions and all these things, their experience, are just as valuable as yours, and be curious about those. You want to leave each other feeling valued, that how you see things, how you approach money, your experiences around money, how you grew up in your family, that those things matter to me, and I want to understand them better. So when you can come with curiosity, that's going to leave your partner feeling valued, and hopefully that they would, give the same back and want to understand you. And then we can just have a different conversation here. Like, you just make it matter that your partner has different perspectives than you.
Yeah, I don't know if you or somebody else was about to have a question after that, one of those, or if you have a question now. I'm going to open that up between each point.
No, I was commenting on that was just really solid advice, and I just like everything else y'all talked about today here is really, it feels like you just have a conversation and you continue to have those conversations to make sure the roles and interests don't change. Like that's just money. Like I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, all of this is to have those conversations to realize our own reactivity and our cycle gets in the way of us having the conversations we need to have to maintain connection. And then when we have that connection, we can do the math. We'll do the math. We'll do the financial work, and we'll do that. We'll do that well. And you guys are well equipped to do that with your community here. So, third point is engage in mutual reciprocal influence. Allow both partners to have a say and influence around how money is managed. That doesn't mean all the nuts and bolts. Partners have varying degrees of desire to get in that. One of you probably has more of an accounting mindset than the other, and that's great. But right, there shouldn't be locked doors around money. There shouldn't be places that your partner couldn't have influence, and that's really key. Is do we both get a say in how money is spent? When there's too much of an inequity in that, it really builds resentment and erodes security in a relationship. And so we really want to make sure if you're the more assertive partner, if you're the one who tends to manage money a lot, you're probably going to have to go the extra mile to make sure to invite your partner in who maybe is less assertive, more meek around that, to really work hard to check in around that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with that goes transparency. It doesn't matter who makes what, right? We're partners. If you're married, you're partners. Your financial future impacts both of you. The money decisions that are made impact both of you. So everything should be open and transparent. And kind of like Adam was saying, even if everything isn't shared all the time, as I said before, I manage the money in my household. My husband's fine to kind of like just let me do that. But he can see it anytime he wants, whether he chooses to or not is up to him. But there's nothing hidden, and there shouldn't be. So you want to just hold that principle that it doesn't matter who makes what. There's an openness and a transparency here in how we manage that, and we can come together on that at the times that that's necessary. I think that leads good into the other one.
Yeah. No matter who makes the money or how much each partner makes or contributes financially, unless otherwise stated in a prenuptial agreement, they should both have equal say and equal voice in how money is managed. One of the things, and I think this is really well illustrated, there's a book called Fair Play. I think there's a movie out with it. If you ever want to think about how we relate as in our gender roles and in our couple relationship, it's a really good book to help us reflect on that, and it has a game attached to it that couples have enjoyed. But one of the things is both partners' time is equally valuable in terms of the partnership, right? Your time might be really valuable to the business world in a certain way, but you should equally value each other's time and effort towards each other. And so again, this is something we see people fall into, and it can sometimes be a mutual pattern. One partner feels like they're a stay-at-home parent, and they feel like they're not allowed to say. So they quiet themselves. They don't have a voice much. They don't feel like they can ask for much sometimes, And again, they start to build this feeling like small and invisible in the relationship. Sometimes the other partner, they feel like, okay, I work for this. I should be able to decide freely. I shouldn't have any constraints on me. But if they don't see their partner there, if they don't get to elicit that conversation from their partner, there gets to be, again, that inequity that can end up feeling bad to both of them. One of the things is there's often a quiet guilt that we see many of the more assertive partners carry with them that they don't know how to deal with and talk about. And sometimes there's this sort of quiet sort of simmering resentment that the other partner can feel. And we just want to unearth that because, again, the connection we have with each other, that's the solid gold stuff that helps us build and enjoy the financial future together without risking that bond we have with each other. So this is why this has become such an important principle for us when we work with couples. So,
I got a question. I want to call on Julia. Julia, you made a comment that says, "I think that might be easier said than done." Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because I'm probably right there with you, but I want to make sure I understand what you mean.
just real quick, I want to jump in. I have a 1 o'clock appointment that I have to get to. I'm so sorry I have to cut out short because I know we got a late start due to our technical. So I'm just going to let Adam process your questions with you, but feel free to just email me if anybody has any other questions or any ways that I could be helpful. And I'm going to make sure I get the slide to you, Jay, so you can disperse this to your people. But thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this.
Absolutely. Great to see you.
You too.
And I'm happy to linger on for a few minutes here. So, ask that question again.
Julia?
Yeah, so can you hear me okay?
Yes, hear you great.
I was just thinking, like, that sounds super easy, but if somebody has, I think one of the common things we see right now is kind of a shift in gender roles where we have more, women breadwinners in the family. And I think that there is a lot of potential problems that can come along with that, even if both parties say that they're perfectly fine with it. I think traditionally it feels weird. How about that?
Yep, it does. It does. We are, we're in a new generation, and it just even if we know in our heads, we maybe haven't seen it modeled what that looks like, or we don't know how to inhabit it as men and women in the world. And so I think it's fair. I would really encourage you, if that's really, man, how do I do this as a female in the world in a way that like is equitable and fair and good for me and my partner. Fair Play is a really good book. I think the I can't remember. I just forgot her name. It was on the tip of my tongue. I think she does a really good job highlighting how this is at play. And she has a card game you can order with the book to play with your partner. And basically, it's about doling out household responsibilities, but then financial stuff is in it. Who takes care of date night, different things like that. And then you really try to figure out how to empower each other for what you most value in life. And so that's a little bit of a deeper dive. But the biggest thing I think you're already doing, just to give you a pat on the back, is you're aware of it. You're aware. This feels uneasy. I don't know how to do that. How does this feel to you, as a partner, that this is kind of uneasy there? So,
is it Eve Rodsky?
Yeah, that's it.
Rodsky. Okay.
Rodsky. Yep.
There you
go. So, I don't want to be a naysayer for that book. I read it.
Yeah.
It's so much work.
Yeah.
It's another job.
Yeah. I think it's a fair critique of the book, actually. So I don't think you're a naysayer. I think for those who can just take the nuggets and leave the rest, I found it really valuable for couples to be able to play around with that. But I think some of it, she probably gets a little too concrete in each discrete task. But I think her general principle of helping make invisible work visible is the thing she does, has been helpful to a lot of men that I work with, and helpful to validate a lot of women that I work with, but help women get out of what I call a resentment trap, and men get out of what I would say is this ambiguous sort of guilt trap. So, but that's fair pushback. Other questions just over the whole presentation, and I'm going to try to jump on. I'm going to stop sharing our slides here so I can just maybe see some of you all. But yeah, any just questions, reflections as we go through all of this?
I'll weigh in for Marshall here. He put in the chat, it is uneasy. It's a fragile topic a lot of times. So for couples who are dealing with, walking on thin ice when they start talking about financial information, just anything in general, what's the best way to approach that to where they can get on a little bit more solid ground and start having some of the bigger, I would say bigger conversations, but using y'all's terms, slowing that cycle down a little more, or a little faster, slowing it down faster, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. This is always a hard, I'm not just trying to, sell the work that I do. And I'm specifically not trying to sell my own work to you, because most of you are probably not in this state. And so I can't
Right.
see you anyways, but,
Yeah.
find a therapist. One of the things I do, and you might have, is anybody up in Massachusetts or Connecticut or up in the Northeast at all?
Joanne, you're in Vermont?
New Hampshire.
Oh,
Okay.
so close.
You might be close enough to hear, but there's a couple different providers in Tennessee. I think one in North Carolina, Massachusetts. One of the things I do is I train people in something called a relationship checkup. It is a brief 2-session thing. You can go online and look at aramu.com. There might be providers in your area. Our provider network is growing rapidly. We've trained thousands of counselors in the military, and I consult with them on that. But that is really just a quick 2-session conversation where you can bring up a topic like money and meet with a really skilled facilitator that celebrates your strengths and helps you understand what pattern you're caught in really quickly.
What, can you spell Aramu?
ARAMU.com. And just, you'll see relationship checkups. I don't know where all the providers are. I know the hub is Clark University in Massachusetts. I know there's some in Connecticut. Obviously, there's some in Tennessee. But that is a good way. It's sort of weird as licensed professionals. It's hard to cross state lines, so that's why you kind of have to find one in your area, just because of our credentialing. But that is a great resource if you have one of those in your area. But if not, I think just going into a therapist, it would be great to say, hey, we just would like a couple sessions around money. Can we get like 5 sessions in around this, helping us orient around how we talk about money. Again, for most, I know all this stuff in my head. I lead marriage retreats. I still need a third person to meet with my wife and I, genuinely. We are literally meeting with a therapist this afternoon. We do so about once a quarter, sometimes more frequently, sometimes less frequently, to just kind of check in and really get into what are we carrying around with us that we're having a hard time talking about. And it's hard to do. It's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to talk about these things. So obviously, I believe a lot in therapy and what a skilled professional can do to help facilitate better conversations. But I don't want that to be the only thing I leave you with is go see a therapist, right? That's not my only pitch. I think the biggest thing is knowing your role in your pattern and being able to humbly sort of acknowledge that to your partner helps make it safer to connect around that. So if you can say, hey, you know what? I just went to this presentation today and I realized sometimes I get in that parent role, or sometimes I get in that rebellious child role with you. And I want to hide all the money and I want to spend it and I don't want you to have any say. Nana, boo boo. That's how I get with you. And I just realized I do that. And I bet that doesn't feel good to you. I don't know if we can talk about it today, but I want to talk about it because I want to have my relationship with you matters more than what we do with money. That's the message. That's the message you want to get to your partner. In the end, I still want to have my freedom, maybe. I still want to have a say in this, or I still want to have my savings. I still want to build for the future, but I want our connection. I want our connection to be good and have that. So how do we get there? That's sort of a good sort of posture of the heart. I know that's a bit abstract, probably not super pragmatic, but hopefully that's one step in the right direction. So any other thoughts, reflections, questions coming up for you as you all kind of check into this?
Julia, you want to ask your question? You put in the chat?
I think I was just like already on that wavelength pretty much.
Yeah.
You like introduce it and then say what to talk about later.
So
my experience that my husband, I try to have these conversations. He's like, you're doing a great job and this is your world. I'm just living in it. And thank you so much. And so we don't ever really get under the surface. Spoiler, I kind of find it. So he's like, you got this. You have this handled. This is your arena. But I also have that silent guilt of like, this may be my arena, but I'm doing a good job here. Like, I want to talk about it sometimes, but I don't want to fight about it. So.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes what our underlying need is I can manage this on my own, but I actually don't want to do this alone. These are big decisions. These are big investments, and I want to feel warmly held in my feelings around these choices. I want to know you're in it with me. And maybe that is mostly just listening, being interested, being curious, right? Um, but I would liken it to, again, what you all are engaging in. It's like for many of your partners, it's like, well, what if you never ask them a question about their job, right? For many partners, I ask, what if you never asked your maybe stay-at-home partner what it's like for them to parent all day, right? We want our partner to be curious about what makes us tick, what we're passionate about. And so I think that's a part of our connection is just trying to say, yeah, I'm realizing I know you're okay with it, and that's great and healthy, but I don't want to be alone in this. I want you to be involved and a little bit interested. You don't have to be knee deep in it as I am, but I want to share this journey with you. That's what I signed up for in life, and this is a big piece of my life in a way, right? I don't know. How does that speak into your concern there, Julia?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I am a little fearful because if I ask for that, then I won't ever do that, and um, there might be something that he handles that I don't want to be a part of. So I mean,
Yeah, yeah. Well, just listen to that fear, and again, we want to move towards vulnerability with that, and just being honest and saying, yeah, I want you to be involved in this, but I'm a little bit worried about what you might ask of me in return, and I don't know how to navigate that, right? That would be so open, and if I were well postured, I would love to hear that from my spouse. I would love to hear about their anxieties, their fears. Gosh, that just pulls me in when my partner shares that with me. When I'm well postured, right? Which is critical. Yeah.
That's good. What do you mean by well postured? What do you mean?
Yeah, well, I have bad days, right? And
Yeah. No, come on. Nobody
I
does.
get irritable and dismissive when my wife comes to me and wants to talk about, the kids and her anxieties as a stay-at-home mom and different things like that. So I get it, but on my good days, I had a good day. Yeah, I had a good day yesterday. We're sitting around talking to dinner, and she was just sharing how my son is reading and how she delights in a mom and teaching him. And I just felt like, oh, thank you for sharing your heart as a mom and how much you love. I just loved her delight in seeing him grow, and I was very attentive to that. And I love those moments, and I was well postured to receive it, and it was a good connecting moment. So that's what I'm talking about. That's the good stuff. I
Yeah.
want more of that. So
Yeah. I I will say, you were mentioning about some resources and things, and while Cassie and I have never been to marital counseling because until I met you guys, here's my viewpoint on marital counseling. It was a last ditch effort
right,
for couples who were on the brink of getting a divorce.
yeah,
That was my viewpoint on it. And anybody I'd heard was going to counseling. All right, well, that's maybe it's three strikes and they're done. Or kind of thing. But talking with y'all last year or hearing you present, having you today, I mean, it's just one of those things where that's not the case. Like I'm wrong in that, and to Julia's point, like how if we have a spouse who won't even talk about money, like how would we warm them up the idea to go to a counseling session if that's their perception as well? Even like bringing up the idea, hey, we need to go to marital counseling. If I said that to Cassie, my wife, she'd be like, "Are we in trouble?" Like
yeah.
or that's my assumption anyway. How could we, if this is something somebody wanted to explore and finding a provider in their area or in their state, what's the best way to approach that conversation? And realizing everybody's different, every relationship's different, and I'm trying to paint you in a corner. Like, what's the
No, that's
what's the silver
fine.
bullet?
Fine. One of the things I love about the relationship checkup and why I'm so passionate about training people in it is it's a proactive preventative measure for couples to do a checkup once a year.
Yeah.
Whenever one of my friends asks, what should we be doing to take care of my marriage? I'm like, do something once a year. And this is what the idea behind it is, that what's that second law, thermodynamics, everything, moves towards chaos and entropy. I say that's true of marriage too, right? It's marriage is a chronic condition. That's a terrible way of saying that, but the reality is, without maintenance and care, right? I like to think of the dental metaphor. Nobody here would say, you know what, it's a good idea to never go to the dentist. I bet my teeth will be great. I'll be able to keep them for my whole life. If I never go to the dentist, I bet it'll be fine. we know we got to go to the dentist. We may put it off, but we know we got to go. Same thing with marriages, that most people without some type of support, sometimes that's pastor and religious communities, sometimes that's different things, books, and some couples are just good at doing this. But again, without that, oh, sorry, something hit my throat here.
It's all right. You got some water?
We're going to really struggle to keep that happy, lifelong relationship. So I just tell couples, the average relationship, if you look at research, is on a downward slope. And unless they are doing things actively to maintain that, that it's like this. No relationship stays static, right? And so I just encourage people to do something, get a checkup, something that celebrates your strengths, celebrates you as a couple, helps reconnect you with what you love about each other, and then send you on your merry way. Most couples don't need intensive counseling. They just need some focused encouragement and focused clarification on why they get stuck in their hardest conversations. And that's what that's what a checkup's about. That's what a good therapist can do for you, is say, hey, I just had a couple actually message in right before this started, and they said, hey, we're due for our annual checkup with you. We're doing great, loving each other, but we realized we're due. We should come in and find a time with you soon. And I'm like, all right, that's great. So,
last question, Julia asked, would you recommend one of the partners going to counseling alone if the spouse refuses to go?
Yeah, I think that can be beneficial. I would seek out a couples counselor who understands couples relationships, because sometimes you get in with an individual counselor, and we call them divorce counselors, where you'll just gripe about your partner. They'll believe everything you say, and they'll say, yeah, you should just leave that jerk, right? That doesn't do anybody any good, right? So find someone who's willing to understand patterns and understand what we've talked about today, that sort of gets couples relationships, and say, hey, I'm trying to understand how I relate to my partner in a way that seems to elicit defensiveness, or no one's to blame, but there's probably something we can reflect on that we're doing relationally that makes it hard for our partner to come talk to us. When I think about my relationship with my partner around money, my wife, for me, it's a realization of I need to make it safe for her to talk, because I get frustrated. I get worked up, right? And my work to do personally is making it safe, calm for her to talk and open, be accepting, be understanding, be listening. And when I do that, she's more willing to talk. When she's more willing to talk, hey, guess what? I get less frustrated and angry when she talks to me about it. And then we're in the good cycle. So, yeah, I think it can be beneficial, but but find someone who's a couples counselor and say, hey, I want some relationship help for myself with you. So
good stuff. Adam, thank you again. Great seeing you. Great chatting with you again. I've taken it away. Like I feel like I've landed on that fear Dana was talking about, of unintentionally not showing our updated personal financial statement. Is probably back to the spender saver thing where I know how much money we have, and
yeah,
here she's gonna go spend it all, which I know she's not. but
Yeah.
I think I've landed on that as I've processed that as you were talking. So thank you. This has been amazing. We look forward to the follow up and stuff that you guys can provide to us as we continue on this journey. We've got the rest of this month. This was fitting for February, the month of love, as I call it, here for Valentine's Day. So thank you. Tell Dana we appreciate her, and we'll be in touch soon. Okay.
All right. Good to be with you all. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you. See y'all.